The security monitors showed $847 million disappearing into digital darkness, and the only person who knew how to stop it had just been escorted out of the building in disgrace. Olivia Bennett thought firing the sleeping engineer was her first decisive move as CEO. Instead, it became the mistake that nearly destroyed everything. By the time she discovered what Ethan Foster had actually been doing for those 48 sleepless hours, the malware he'd been fighting alone was already spreading through Aurelius Pay's core systems like poison through veins. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this reaches. The executive elevator doors opened with a soft chime that felt almost ceremonial. Olivia Bennett stepped into the operations center of Aurelius Pay at exactly 6:47 a.m., her heels clicking against polished concrete in a rhythm she'd practiced to sound confident but not aggressive. 30 years old, the youngest CEO in the company's history, a promotion that had sparked 3 weeks of vicious speculation across tech news sites and half the finance blogs in Silicon Valley. She'd expected resistance, expected doubt, expected to walk into a room full of engineers who thought she was too young, too inexperienced, too female to run a billion-dollar payment processing empire. What she didn't expect was the smell. Not the clean ozone scent of expensive server rooms or the faint coffee aroma that usually permeated tech offices. This was something else, something stale, the smell of a room where someone had been living instead of working. The operations center stretched before her like a cathedral to modern finance. 3 stories of glass-walled server chambers, massive displays showing transaction flows from 6 continents, workstations arranged in careful clusters where Aurelius Pay's best engineers monitored the digital arteries that moved money for everyone from corner grocery stores to multinational corporations. And there, at the center console, surrounded by 9 monitors displaying what looked like endless cascading error logs, was a man asleep at his desk, not dozing, not nodding off during a boring overnight shift, fully asleep. His head rested on his folded arms, his body slumped in the expensive ergonomic chair that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Dark hair fell across his forehead. The stubble on his jaw suggested he hadn't seen a razor in days. His shirt, wrinkled, untucked, looked like he'd slept in it, which, apparently, he had. Olivia felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. This was exactly the kind of carelessness that had let Aurelius Pay drift into mediocrity over the past 2 years. The previous CEO had been too soft, too willing to tolerate creative work cultures and flexible standards that really just meant people did whatever they wanted. She'd promised the board she would fix that. Several engineers had noticed her arrival. They looked up from their workstations, eyes moving from her to the sleeping man and back again. Waiting. Watching what the new boss would do. Olivia crossed the floor in 12 decisive steps. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of cooling fans and clicking keyboards. The man didn't move. She tried again, louder. "Excuse me." Nothing. One of the nearby engineers, a woman with purple-streaked hair and enormous headphones around her neck, started to stand up. "Ms. Bennett, maybe I should—" Olivia held up one hand. The engineer sat back down. Then Olivia did something she'd later replay in her mind 1,000 times, each replay making her feel smaller and more foolish. She reached out and rapped her knuckles sharply against the desk, 3 loud knocks that echoed across the operations floor. The man jerked awake so violently he nearly fell out of his chair. His hands flew up in a defensive gesture, his eyes wild and unfocused. For a second he looked genuinely terrified, like someone waking from a nightmare into something worse. "What?" He blinked hard, trying to focus. His voice came out rough, hoarse. "What time is it?" "Time for you to explain why you're sleeping during work hours," Olivia said. Her tone was precise, controlled, the voice she'd cultivated through years of fighting her way up through venture capital firms where showing weakness meant getting eaten alive. The man stared at her. Slowly, recognition dawned across his features. You're the new CEO." "I am. And you are?" "Ethan Foster, Senior Systems Engineer." He was trying to sit up straighter, trying to look professional, but his movements were clumsy, uncoordinated. The man was clearly exhausted beyond normal human limits. "Miss Bennett, I need to brief you on what you need to do is explain why I found you asleep at your workstation on my first day. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, frustration maybe, or resignation. Behind him, the monitors continued their cascade of warnings. Red text, amber alerts, system diagnostics that looked wrong even to Olivia's non-technical eyes. I've been here for 48 hours, Ethan said slowly. We have a situation that requires... I don't care if you've been here for a week, Olivia interrupted. Sleeping on the job is unacceptable. Pack your things. You're fired. The operations center went silent. Actually, silent. The kind of quiet where you could hear individual keystrokes, where the sound of someone's coffee mug touching their desk rang out like a gunshot. The purple-haired engineer stood up again. Wait, you can't... I absolutely can, Olivia said, not taking her eyes off Ethan. And I will. This company has standards. If we're going to compete with the best payment processors in the world, we need people who take their responsibilities seriously. Ethan's jaw tightened. For a second, Olivia thought he might argue, might fight back. Instead, he just nodded slowly. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I don't think so. Ms. Bennett, please listen to me. Ethan stood up, swaying slightly on his feet. He grabbed the edge of the desk to steady himself. Before you do anything else, before anyone touches these systems, there's something you need to understand. What I understand is that you're fired. Security will escort you out. The servers. Ethan's voice rose with sudden urgency. You cannot restart the servers. Do you understand me? Whatever happens, do not restart. Are you seriously trying to tell me how to run operations right now, after I just caught you sleeping? Olivia turned to the nearest supervisor, a nervous-looking man in his 40s clutching a tablet. Get security up here. Now! The supervisor hesitated. Ms. Bennett, Ethan is our lead infrastructure specialist. Maybe we should... I didn't ask for your opinion. Get security. The man fumbled with his tablet, his hands actually shaking. Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he looked somehow even more tired, but also disappointed, like he'd expected better and been proven wrong. Okay, he said softly. Okay, I understand. He reached into his pocket with slow, deliberate movements and pulled out his employee badge, looked at it for a second, then set it gently on the desk beside his keyboard. The purple-haired engineer stepped forward. Ethan, don't. This is insane. Tell her... It's fine, Maya. Ethan managed a weak smile. It's fine. It's not fine. You've been protecting this entire company for 2 days straight. Tell her what's happening. But Ethan was already gathering his things. A worn messenger bag, a jacket that had been draped over the back of his chair. He moved like someone in a dream, or maybe like someone too exhausted to care anymore. Security arrived, 2 men in dark uniforms who looked uncomfortable with the situation. Olivia gestured toward Ethan. Escort him out of the building. Make sure he returns any company property. As the security guards moved to flank him, Ethan turned back to face the operations center. The engineers who'd been watching in stunned silence. The monitors still cascading their warnings. Listen to me, he said, his voice carrying across the floor with sudden clarity. All of you. Do not restart the core system. I don't care what the error logs say. I don't care what diagnostic procedures you think you should run. Do not restart. Maya looked like she was about to cry. We won't. I promise. Make sure, Ethan said. Then he let the security guards lead him toward the elevator. Olivia watched him go, feeling the weight of every eye in the operations center on her. Let them stare, let them question. This was leadership. This was what making hard decisions looked like. The elevator doors closed on Ethan Foster's exhausted face. Olivia turned to the remaining engineers. Someone give me a status report on current operations, and someone clean up that workstation. It's a disaster. Nobody moved for several seconds. Finally, Maya spoke up, her voice shaking with barely controlled anger. You just fired the only person in this building who understands what's happening to our infrastructure. Then I suggest the rest of you figure it out quickly, Olivia said. That's what you're paid for, isn't it? She walked away before anyone could respond, her heels clicking back toward the executive elevator. Behind her, she heard furious, whispered conversations starting up, heard Maya's voice rising in anger before someone hushed her. Good. Let them be angry. They'd respect her for it eventually. They'd understand that she wasn't here to make friends or maintain the comfortable mediocrity that had been strangling Aurelius Pay's growth. She was here to build an empire. The elevator doors closed, and Olivia caught her reflection in the polished metal. She looked exactly how she wanted to look: sharp, professional, in control. She had no idea she'd just made the worst mistake of her life. Bonds. Ethan Foster stood in the parking garage beside his 8-year-old Honda Civic and tried to remember how to breathe. The adrenaline that had kept him functioning through 48 hours of crisis management was draining away, leaving behind something that felt like being hollowed out. His hands shook as he fumbled with his car keys. His vision kept blurring at the edges. Fired. He'd been fired. The word didn't feel real. He'd worked at Aurelius Pay for 6 years. 6 years of climbing from junior engineer to senior systems specialist. 6 years of learning every quirk and vulnerability in their aging infrastructure. 6 years of being the person they called when everything else failed. And now he was standing in a parking garage at 7 in the morning, fired for sleeping on the job while trying to save the company from a cyber attack that could destroy them. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "I'm so sorry. This is insane. I'll try to talk to her." Ethan texted back with trembling fingers. "Don't. You'll just get yourself fired too. Remember what I said about the servers?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "I'll remember. Get some sleep. Please. Sleep." Right. That's what he needed. Except now, instead of sleeping after successfully stopping a crisis, he was sleeping after getting humiliated and fired. Somehow that made the exhaustion feel different, heavier, like it might crush him if he stopped moving. The drive home happened in a fog. Ethan barely remembered navigating the morning traffic, barely registered the familiar turns into his neighborhood. The apartment complex looked exactly like it had when he'd left it 2 days ago, before everything went to hell. He parked in his assigned spot and sat in the car for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then his phone rang. The school. Chloe's school. Panic spiked through his exhaustion. He answered on the second ring. "Hello? Mr. Foster? This is Jennifer from Lakewood Elementary. I'm calling about Chloe." His heart stopped. "Is she okay? What happened?" "Oh, she's fine. Sorry, I should have led with that. I'm calling because you were supposed to pick her up an hour ago for her dentist appointment. The one you scheduled for this morning?" The dentist. The appointment he'd completely forgotten existed because he'd been fighting malware instead of sleeping, instead of remembering basic parental responsibilities. "I'm so sorry," Ethan said, and his voice cracked embarrassingly. "I'm on my way right now. 10 minutes. I'll be there in 10 minutes. "It's okay, Mr. Foster. These things happen. Chloe's in the office with Mrs. Patterson. She's been reading quietly. No trouble at all." Of course she had, because Chloe was always good, always patient, always understanding when her father screwed up, which he did. Constantly. Ever since Sarah died and left him trying to be both parents to a 7-year-old while maintaining a career that required him to basically live at the office sometimes. He ended the call and drove to the school, his eyes burning with fatigue and something else he refused to name. Chloe was indeed sitting in the office, her little backpack at her feet, a library book open in her lap. When she saw him, her face lit up with that smile that always made everything else seem smaller. "Daddy?" "Hey, Bug." He crouched down to hug her, and she wrapped her thin arms around his neck. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo he never remembered to buy until they ran out. "I'm sorry I'm late." "It's okay. Mrs. Patterson let me read in the quiet room." She pulled back to look at him, her expression shifting to concern. "Daddy, you look really tired. Did you work all night again?" "Yeah, I did." "Did you fix the problem?" He managed a smile. "I did my best, Bug." Jennifer, the office administrator, gave him a sympathetic look as he signed Chloe out. "Hard week? You could say that." In the car, Chloe chattered about her morning at school while Ethan tried to remember if the dentist's office was on Maple Street or Oak Street. His brain felt like static. "Daddy, you missed the turn," Chloe said gently. "Right, sorry." He made an awkward U-turn. "Are you sure you're okay to drive?" She sounded worried. His 7-year-old daughter sounded worried about him driving safely. That's what his life had become. "I'm fine, Bug. Just tired." The dentist appointment was mercifully quick. No cavities, healthy teeth, everything perfect because Chloe was responsible about brushing in ways Ethan hadn't been at her age. Or at his current age, honestly. Back in the car, Chloe said, "Can we go home now? You should sleep." "Yeah, home sounds good." The apartment was quiet when they entered. Ethan had left in such a hurry 2 days ago that there were still breakfast dishes in the sink, still Chloe's homework scattered across the dining table. "I'm going to do my reading," Chloe announced. "You should sleep on the couch. I'll be quiet." "You don't have to be quiet, Bug." "I want to." She was already pulling her library book from her backpack. "You work really hard. You should rest." Ethan looked at his daughter, the small person who'd learned to be independent way too young, who never complained when he worked late, who adapted to his chaotic schedule with grace he definitely didn't deserve, and felt something crack in his chest. "I love you, Chloe." She looked up, surprised by the sudden emotion in his voice. Then she smiled. "I love you too, Daddy. Now go sleep before you fall over." He collapsed on the couch, without even taking off his shoes. His body hit the cushions like someone had cut his strings. The laptop was still on the coffee table where he'd left it, still logged into Aurelius Pay's monitoring systems even though he probably didn't have access anymore. Should check. Should log out. Should... Darkness took him before he could finish the thought. Back at Aurelius Pay headquarters, Olivia Bennett was discovering that being CEO involved significantly more meetings than she'd anticipated. Finance team at 8, marketing at 9, legal at 10. Each one a careful dance of establishing authority without alienating people she needed. Each one a test of whether she could actually do this job or if the board had made a terrible mistake promoting her. By 11:30, she was starting to feel confident again. The finance meeting had gone well. Marketing had some interesting ideas for expanding their small business outreach. Legal was always tedious, but she'd handled it. She was reviewing quarterly projections when her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Bennett, the operations supervisor needs to speak with you. He says it's urgent." The nervous man from this morning, Olivia still hadn't learned his name, practically fell through the doorway. His tablet was clutched to his chest like a shield. "We have a problem," he said. Olivia gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit. Explain." "Transaction processing is slowing down. We're seeing unusual latency across multiple corridors. The engineering team thinks it might be a routing issue, but how unusual? Delays of 15 to 20 seconds on transactions that should process in 2 to 3. Olivia frowned. That didn't sound catastrophic. "What's the normal variance?" "Normally, we don't see variance at all. 2 to 3 seconds is 2 to 3 seconds. Always." "So what's causing it?" The supervisor looked miserable. "We don't know. The diagnostic systems aren't showing any obvious failures. Everything appears to be functioning normally, but the delays keep building." "Building? As in getting worse?" "Yes. They started about an hour ago. We're up to 25 seconds now on some transactions." Olivia pulled up the operations dashboard on her computer. The displays showed normal system health across the board. Green lights everywhere. "If everything looks normal, why are we seeing delays?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." "What does the engineering team recommend?" The supervisor hesitated. "They want to wait, monitor the situation, see if it resolves on its own." "That's not a recommendation. That's hoping the problem goes away." "I know, but without knowing what's causing it, what about standard troubleshooting procedures? What would we normally do in this situation?" Another hesitation, longer this time. "Normally, we would restart the affected servers during a low-volume window, flush the transaction queues, reset the routing tables." "Then do that." "Ms. Bennett, the engineer you fired this morning specifically told us not to restart the servers." Olivia leaned back in her chair. "The engineer I fired was asleep at his desk. I'm not basing operational decisions on the advice of someone who can't stay awake during work hours." "But he was our lead infrastructure specialist. He knew these systems better than anyone." "Then I suggest your team learns those systems quickly. We can't have a single point of failure." "What if he'd quit? What if he'd gotten hit by a bus? You're telling me the entire company would be helpless?" The supervisor looked like he wanted to argue but didn't dare. "No, Ms. Bennett." "Good. So here's what we're going to do. Schedule the server restart for this afternoon during the lowest volume window. Have the team ready to monitor for any issues. Clear?" "Yes, Ms. Bennett." "Anything else?" He stood up, still clutching his tablet. "No, that's everything." After he left, Olivia returned to her quarterly projections. Transaction delays were annoying but not uncommon in systems as complex as Aurelius Pay's infrastructure. A clean restart would probably fix whatever was causing the routing issues. She didn't think about Ethan Foster again until much later. Didn't think about the desperation in his voice when he'd tried to warn her. Didn't think about the way the other engineers had looked at her like she'd just done something unforgivable. She was too busy being CEO to waste time on doubts. Ethan woke to the sound of Chloe talking quietly to her stuffed rabbit. "No, Mr. Hoppy, we can't make noise. Daddy needs to sleep. He had to work very hard. Yes, I know you want to watch cartoons, but we should be quiet." He cracked one eye open. The afternoon sunlight filtering through the living room blinds suggested he'd been asleep for hours. His phone said 2:47 p.m., almost 8 hours. He'd slept almost 8 hours and somehow felt even more exhausted than before. Chloe noticed him stirring. "Daddy, you're awake. Are you feeling better?" "Yeah, Bug, much better." It was only partly a lie. His body felt like someone had beaten him with a stick, but his mind was clearer. "Have you been okay?" "Uh-huh. I made a sandwich for lunch, and I did my homework, and I read 3 chapters." "You made a sandwich?" He sat up, alarm creeping in. "Chloe, you know you're not supposed to use the stove." "I didn't, just peanut butter and jelly. I was really careful with the knife." She showed him her hands. No cuts, no band-aids. Ethan felt another crack in whatever was holding him together. His 7-year-old daughter had made her own lunch because her father was too fired and too exhausted to do it for her. "I'm sorry, Bug." "It's okay. You were tired." She climbed onto the couch next to him, tucking herself under his arm. "Daddy, did something bad happen at work?" Kids, they always knew. "Yeah, something bad happened." "Did you get in trouble?" "How did you explain getting fired to a 7-year-old, especially when you'd been fired for trying to do the right thing?" "I had a disagreement with my boss," Ethan said carefully, "about how to handle a problem, and she decided she didn't want me working there anymore." Chloe processed this with the serious expression she got when thinking hard about something. "So you don't have a job now?" "Not right now, but I'll find another one. Don't worry." "I'm not worried." She said it with such complete confidence that Ethan almost believed her. "You're really smart. Anyone would want you to work for them." He kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, Bug." They sat together in the quiet apartment, the afternoon sun making patterns on the carpet. Ethan's laptop was still on the coffee table, still logged into the monitoring systems. He should log out, should accept that he wasn't part of Aurelius Pay anymore. Instead, he found himself checking the status displays. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The transaction delays should have resolved by now. The malware he'd isolated should have been showing signs of trying to propagate. But all the indicators were green. All the metrics were within normal ranges, which meant one of two things. Either the threat had miraculously resolved itself, or his phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "They're restarting the servers in 15 minutes. Ethan's blood went cold. He called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're joking," he said. "I wish I was. New CEO ordered it. Said we can't base operational decisions on advice from fired employees." "Maya, you have to stop them. You understand what will happen if—" "I tried. I told them what you said. I showed them your documentation. They don't care. She doesn't care." Ethan stood up so fast he nearly knocked Chloe off the couch. "Who's running the restart procedure?" "Chen from infrastructure and his team." "Put Chen on the phone." "Ethan, you're not authorized to—" "Put him on the phone, Maya, please." A rustling sound, muffled voices. Then Chen's cautious voice. "Foster?" "Chen, listen to me very carefully. You cannot restart those servers. The transaction delays are not a routing issue. They're the malware trying to distribute itself across the backup systems. If you restart during distribution, you'll activate the payload across the entire network simultaneously. The diagnostics show normal operation, because I modified the diagnostics to hide the malware signature. That was part of the isolation protocol. Chen, I worked on this for 2 days straight. I documented everything. Did you even read my notes?" A pause. "Some of them. But Ms. Bennett was pretty clear, I don't care what she said. She doesn't understand what's happening. If you trigger that restart, you're going to corrupt every transaction queue in the system. Millions of dollars will get trapped in routing loops. Corporate transfers will disappear. You'll have customer funds just vanishing into the infrastructure. And the malware will be distributed across every backup server, every failover system. You'll go from one infection point to hundreds. Chen sounded uncertain now. I should probably check with, there's no time. The restart is scheduled in 10 minutes. 15 minutes. Chen, please. I'm begging you. Just delay the restart. Give me time to come back and explain. You can't come back. You were fired. Security has your badge flagged. Ethan wanted to scream. Wanted to reach through the phone and shake some sense into everyone at that company. Instead, he forced himself to stay calm. Then you need to make this decision. You've worked with me for 4 years. You know I don't bullshit about security. Have I ever been wrong about infrastructure threats? Another pause. Longer this time. No. So trust me now. Delay the restart. Tell them the systems need additional diagnostics. Tell them whatever you need to tell them, but do not restart those servers. If I refuse a direct order from the CEO on my first day with her in charge, you'll keep the company from collapsing. And if I'm wrong, if this is all paranoid nonsense from a fired employee, then you can restart tomorrow and I'll look like an idiot. But if I'm right and you restart anyway, there won't be a company left to fire you from. Silence on the other end of the line. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Finally, Chen said, I'll delay it 24 hours. But Foster, if you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. Check my documentation folder. I left detailed analysis of the malware signature, the distribution pattern, everything. It's all there. Okay, I'll look at it. Thank you. He ended the call and realized he was shaking. Chloe was staring at him with worried eyes. Daddy, what's wrong? Nothing, Bug. Just work stuff. But you don't work there anymore. No, I don't. He sat back down, suddenly exhausted again. I really don't. The laptop was still showing normal system status. Green lights. Healthy metrics. Everything perfectly fine on the surface, while poison spread through the infrastructure underneath. Ethan had bought them 24 hours. Maybe that would be enough time for Chen to read the documentation and understand the threat. Maybe the malware would reveal itself before anyone did something catastrophic. Maybe. He closed the laptop and pulled Chloe close. Want to watch a movie? He asked. Really? In the afternoon? Really, pick whatever you want. She scrambled for the remote with the kind of excitement that reminded him she was still just a little kid, despite how grown up she sometimes had to act. Within minutes, they were settled on the couch watching some animated thing about talking animals. Ethan tried to focus on the movie, tried to focus on his daughter's laughter, tried not to think about the company slowly dying from a threat only he fully understood, tried not to think about the CEO who'd fired him without listening, tried not to think about what would happen when the 24 hours ran out. The movie ended just after 5 o'clock. Chloe had fallen asleep against Ethan's side somewhere around the halfway point, her breathing soft and even. Mr. Hoppy clutched against her chest. Ethan sat very still, afraid to move and wake her, staring at nothing while his mind ran through disaster scenarios. His phone buzzed. A text from Chen. Read your documentation. Holy shit. Calling emergency meeting with senior engineers will keep you updated. At least someone was listening now. At least someone had bothered to actually look at the analysis he'd spent 2 days compiling while fighting exhaustion and trying to contain a threat that should have required an entire team. Another buzz. Maya this time. Chen just called everyone into conference room. New CEO is pissed. This is getting ugly. Ethan could imagine it. Olivia Bennett, barely 8 hours into her reign, being told that her first major operational decision might destroy the company. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered quietly, trying not to wake Chloe. Hello? Mr. Foster, this is James Chen. I'm here with the senior engineering team and we need your help. I'm on speakerphone, aren't I? Yes. Look, I read your documentation, we all did, and if you're right about this malware architecture, I am right. Then we have a serious problem. The transaction delays have increased to 42 seconds average. Some queues are hitting over a minute, and we're starting to see data inconsistencies in the routing tables. Ethan closed his eyes. It's spreading faster than I thought. The delay in containment gave it time to replicate across more nodes. A new voice came on the line. Maya, we need you to walk us through the isolation protocol. Your documentation explains what you did, but not how to extend it to the new infection points. I can't walk you through anything. I was fired, remember? I don't have system access. We can get you access, Chen said. Temporary credentials. Read only for now, but Chen, I appreciate this, but your new CEO made it pretty clear she doesn't want me involved. Ms. Bennett isn't on this call. Does she know you're calling me? Silence. That's what I thought, Ethan said. Look, I want to help, you know I do, but I'm not going to give you ammunition to get yourselves fired. Chen, you're lead on infrastructure now. Maya, you're the best systems analyst in that building. You can figure this out. In time, maybe, Maya said. But we don't have time. These transaction delays are going to start triggering client alerts within the hour. Once that happens, once customers start seeing their payments stuck in processing, then you need to brief Ms. Bennett on the actual situation. Show her the documentation. Make her understand what's happening. We tried, Chen said. She thinks we're being paranoid, that we're loyal to you and trying to undermine her authority. Of course she did, because admitting she'd made a catastrophic mistake on her first day would mean admitting weakness, and people like Olivia Bennett didn't do weakness. I can't help you, Ethan said quietly. I'm sorry, but I have a daughter to think about. I can't risk. Chloe stirred against his side, mumbling something in her sleep. He lowered his voice even further. I can't risk making this worse for my family. Find someone else. He ended the call before anyone could argue. For a long moment, he just sat there, feeling like the worst kind of coward. His former colleagues were trying to save the company from a disaster he'd predicted, and he was hiding in his apartment because he was scared of making his unemployment more complicated. But what was he supposed to do? Storm back into Aurelius Pay headquarters and demand they listen to him? He'd been publicly fired and escorted out by security. He had no authority, no access, no credibility with the one person who mattered. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. He ignored it. Then another. And another. Finally, he answered. What? Mr. Foster, this is David Kim from Aurelius Pay's board of directors. Ethan sat up straighter, careful not to disturb Chloe. I don't understand. Why are you calling me? Because my phone has been ringing nonstop for the past 20 minutes, with engineers telling me our new CEO fired the one person who can prevent a catastrophic system failure. Is that accurate? I don't know if I'm the only person who can prevent it, but I was working on containing a cyber attack when she fired me this morning, yes. And did you attempt to inform her of the situation? Briefly. She cut me off, said she didn't care how long I'd been working, that sleeping on the job was unacceptable. A long pause. Then Kim said, Mr. Foster, I'm going to be direct with you. We have a significant amount of money invested in keeping Aurelius Pay operational. If what the engineering team is telling me is accurate, we're looking at potential losses that could run into the hundreds of millions, maybe more. That's not an exaggeration. Then I need you to come back. Tonight. Right now. I'll authorize whatever access you need, whatever resources, whatever. With all respect, Mr. Kim, you're not the one who fired me. Miss Bennett is CEO. Unless she's asking me to come back, she doesn't know I'm calling you. Then this conversation is pointless. Mr. Foster, no. Listen to me. I spent 6 years at that company. 6 years learning those systems, building relationships with that team, earning people's trust. And your new CEO threw all of that away in about 90 seconds because she decided I looked unprofessional. She didn't ask questions, didn't want context, just made a judgment and executed it. She made a mistake. She made a choice, and now she needs to live with the consequences of that choice. Ethan could hear Kim breathing on the other end of the line. When the board member spoke again, his voice was careful. What would it take to get you to reconsider? An apology from her, in person, and a guarantee that she'll actually listen this time instead of making assumptions. I'll see what I can do. The call ended. Ethan set his phone down and looked at his sleeping daughter. Her face was peaceful, untroubled. She had no idea her father's stubbornness might be condemning thousands of people to financial chaos, because that's what would happen if the malware payload activated across Aurelius Pay's full network. Transaction processing would collapse, Corporate payrolls would freeze. Small businesses waiting for payment approvals would be left hanging. Individual users trying to pay bills or send money to family members would see their funds vanish into digital limbo. And Ethan was refusing to help because his pride was hurt. He gently moved Chloe to the couch, tucking a blanket around her, and went to the kitchen. The dishes from 2 days ago were still in the sink. He started washing them, needing something physical to do with his hands. His phone rang again. He dried his hands and checked the screen. Maya. "What?" he said flatly. "It's worse," she said without preamble. "We're seeing transaction failures now. Not just delays, actual failures. Money going into the system and just disappearing." "How many?" 12 so far, totaling about $43,000. "That you know of. The malware is designed to hide the failures in the error logs. There are probably 10 times that many you haven't detected yet." "Jesus, Ethan, you have to—" "I don't have to do anything. I was fired, remember? People are going to lose their money." "Then maybe your CEO should have thought about that before firing the person trying to protect them." Maya was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. "I get it. I do. She was wrong. She was completely wrong, but punishing her means punishing everyone else too. All those small business owners who use our platform, all those families sending money to each other. They didn't fire you." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. "That's not fair." "No, none of this is fair, but it's the situation we're in." In the living room, Chloe made a small sound in her sleep. Ethan watched her for a moment, this little person who depended on him completely, who trusted him to make good decisions even when he wanted to make selfish ones. "If I come back," he said slowly, "I need direct access to the core systems. No restrictions. No oversight from people who don't understand what they're looking at. Can you make that happen?" "I'll try. And I need someone to watch Chloe. I can't bring her to the office and I can't leave her alone. I'll figure something out. My sister might be able to Maya, I need a guarantee, not a might. I'm not leaving my daughter alone in this apartment while I go save a company that fired me." Okay, give me 10 minutes. She hung up. Ethan stood in his kitchen, surrounded by half-washed dishes, wondering what kind of person agrees to help people who humiliated them, wondering if he was being noble or just weak. His phone rang again. Maya's sister, apparently, a woman named Lisa who sounded far too cheerful for the situation. "So I hear you need a babysitter in an emergency situation, and my sister is calling in favors like the world is ending?" "Something like that. I can be at your place in 30 minutes. I'm good with kids. I have 3 of my own, currently being watched by their father, so I can rescue you." "What's your daughter's name?" "Chloe. She's 7. She's pretty independent, but she needs dinner around 6:30, and bedtime is 8 o'clock. She'll want a story, and I've got this. Maya sent me your address. I'll be there soon." 28 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Lisa turned out to be a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes, and an energy that made Ethan tired just looking at her. "You must be Ethan," she said, stepping inside, "and this must be Chloe." Chloe had woken up when the doorbell rang. She stood near the couch, looking uncertain, Mr. Hoppy clutched in both hands. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi yourself. I'm Lisa. I'm going to hang out with you for a while so your dad can go handle some work stuff. Is that okay?" Chloe looked at Ethan. He crouched down to her level. "I have to go back to the office for a few hours, Bug. Lisa's going to stay with you. She seems nice, right?" "I guess." Chloe's voice was small. "Are you in trouble again?" "No, the opposite, actually. They need my help with something." "But they fired you." "It's complicated." Lisa settled herself on the couch like she belonged there. "How about we make this simple? Chloe, what's your favorite dinner?" "Mac and cheese." "Perfect. I make excellent mac and cheese. The kind with 3 different cheeses and breadcrumbs on top. While your dad is at work, we'll have dinner, and then maybe we can read some stories, and you can tell me about school. Sound good?" Chloe considered this. Then she nodded. Ethan kissed the top of her head. "I'll be back as soon as I can. Be good for Lisa." "I'm always good." "I know you are, Bug." He grabbed his messenger bag, checked that his laptop was inside, and headed for the door. Turned back one more time to see Chloe watching him with those serious eyes that looked too old for her face. "I love you," he said. Love you too, Daddy. Fix the problem. I'll try. The drive back to Aurelius Pay headquarters felt surreal. Less than 12 hours ago, he'd been escorted out of this building in disgrace. Now he was driving back in the dark, the city lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets, trying to save a company run by someone who thought he was incompetent. The parking garage security guard did a double take when Ethan pulled up to the gate. "Mr. Foster, I thought you were—" "I was. Now I'm not. Temporarily. Can I park here or not?" The guard checked something on his computer. "You're on the access list. Temporary credentials. Go ahead." The lobby was nearly empty at this hour. A few late-night workers hurried past, focused on their phones. The security desk waved him through after checking his temporary badge. The elevator ride to the operations center felt longer than usual. Ethan watched the floor numbers climb and tried to prepare himself for whatever disaster awaited him. The doors opened to chaos. Not the organized, purposeful chaos of a well-run operations center. This was panic barely contained. Engineers clustered around monitors, voices raised in argument. Alarm indicators flashed across half the displays. And in the center of it all stood Olivia Bennett, her professional composure cracking at the edges. "I don't care what the diagnostic says," she was saying to Chen. "Find the source of the failures and fix it." "We're trying, but without understanding the attack vector, Apuki. Then figure out the attack vector." Maya spotted Ethan first. Relief flooded her face. Thank God. Every head turned. The operations center went quiet. Olivia stared at him like he was a ghost. "What are you doing here?" "Your board member called me," Ethan said. "Said you needed help. I didn't authorize—" She stopped, visibly collecting herself. "Mr. Kim had no right to contact you without my approval, and yet here I am." Ethan set his messenger bag on an empty desk. "So do you want my help or not?" "I want an explanation of what's happening to my systems. Your systems are being destroyed by malware that I spent 2 days trying to contain before you fired me. The transaction delays are the infection spreading. The failures are the payload beginning to activate. And if we don't stop it in the next few hours, you're going to have a complete network collapse that will cost this company everything." Olivia's jaw tightened. If this malware was such a serious threat, why didn't you inform someone in authority? "I tried to inform you. You were too busy firing me to listen." The engineers were watching this exchange like spectators at a boxing match. Ethan could see Maya trying very hard not to smile. "Fine," Olivia said. "You're here now. Fix it." "Not that simple. I need full system access. I need the team to follow my instructions without question, and I need you to not interfere." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You don't understand these systems. You don't understand the threat. Every time you make a decision based on what seems logical to you, you make things worse. So either you let me work, or I walk out of here and you can watch everything burn." For a long moment, Olivia looked like she might explode. Her hands clenched at her sides. Her face flushed with barely controlled anger. Then very quietly she said, "Do what you need to do." She turned and walked toward the executive elevator without another word. The second the elevator doors closed, the tension in the operations center dropped by half. "Okay," Ethan said, turning to the team. "Someone show me current system status. I need to see exactly how far the infection has spread since this morning." Chen pulled up diagnostic displays across the main monitors. The spread was worse than Ethan had feared. What had been contained to 47 nodes this morning was now distributed across over 200. The malware had found weak points in his isolation protocol and exploited them. "Jesus," Maya breathed. "How do we even begin to—" "We start with the source nodes," Ethan said. "The original infection points. They're still broadcasting the distribution signal. If we can shut those down, we stop new infections. Then we work backwards, cleaning the existing compromised nodes one by one." "That could take days," Chen said. "Then we better work fast." For the next 3 hours, Ethan lived in the code. His fingers flew across keyboards, pulling up system logs, tracing infection pathways, building countermeasures on the fly. The team worked around him, following his instructions with the kind of trust that came from seeing someone who genuinely knew what they were doing. Maya brought him coffee at some point. He drank it without tasting it. Chen asked questions about specific routing protocols. Ethan answered while simultaneously debugging a corrupted transaction queue. Around 10 o'clock, one of the junior engineers said, "I've got a cluster of failures in the European processing corridor. 38 transactions just vanished." "Route them through the backup authentication server," Ethan said without looking up. "The malware hasn't reached that node yet. You'll have to manually verify each transaction, but at least you'll have the data." On it. By 11, they'd managed to shut down 16 of the original source nodes. The infection rate had slowed from exponential to linear. Not good, but better. By midnight, Ethan's eyes were burning and his back hurt from hunching over keyboards. But they were making progress. Real progress. "We're going to make it," Maya said. She sounded surprised. "Don't jinx it," Ethan muttered. That's when all the monitors went red. Every single display in the operations center flashed critical alerts simultaneously. Transaction processing spiked to impossible levels. System load jumped from 70% to 98% in seconds. "What the hell?" Chen was frantically checking diagnostics. "It's like every dormant payload just activated at once." Ethan's blood went cold. No. Someone rebooted the authentication servers. "We didn't touch the authentication servers." "Then who?" The answer came from across the operations center. One of the overnight supervisors, a man Ethan vaguely recognized but didn't know by name, looked up from his workstation with growing horror on his face. "I got an automated maintenance alert," he said. "Said the authentication servers needed a routine restart. It was scheduled, so I approved it." "You approved a restart?" Ethan was already moving, pulling up the automation logs. "Those servers were supposed to be locked down. Who scheduled?" The answer appeared on his screen. A maintenance job scheduled at 6:47 a.m. that morning. Right when Olivia Bennett had been walking through the operations center for the first time. Right when the malware had been waiting for someone to create exactly this kind of opening. "It wasn't a maintenance job," Ethan said. "It was the malware. It's been sitting in the automation system all morning waiting for someone to approve it." The operations center erupted into panic. Engineers started shouting updates about failures cascading across the network. Transaction queues were corrupting faster than they could be isolated. Customer funds were disappearing into routing loops by the thousands. Ethan stood in the middle of the chaos and watched everything he'd spent the past 12 hours trying to prevent happen in real time. Chen appeared at his shoulder. "Tell us what to do." "I don't know." The admission hurt. This is what I was trying to avoid. Once the payload distributes across the authentication network, there's no way to contain it. We'd need to shut down the entire system. So, shut it down. If we shut down the entire system, we lose every transaction currently in progress. Millions of dollars. Maybe tens of millions. And we have no guarantee we can bring it back online safely. But if we don't shut it down, we lose everything anyway, just slower. Maya had joined them. There has to be another option. There isn't. Ethan was still staring at the monitors, at the red alerts multiplying across every display. The malware was designed with this exact scenario in mind. Multiple attack vectors, multiple payloads, distributed activation. Whoever built this knew exactly how our infrastructure works. An inside job? Chen asked. Maybe. Or someone who used to work here. Or someone who studied our systems long enough to understand the vulnerabilities. Ethan shook his head. Doesn't matter now. What matters is stopping the damage. How? Ethan pulled up the core system controls. His hands hovered over the keyboard. The shutdown command would require authorization from 3 senior engineers and 1 executive. He had the engineering credentials. But for the executive authorization, the elevator doors opened. Olivia Bennett stepped out, her professional mask back in place. "Status report," she said. Every engineer turned to look at her. Nobody spoke. Finally, Ethan said, "We're looking at catastrophic system failure. Every transaction in our network is at risk. We need to shut down the entire platform, now." "For how long?" "I don't know. Hours, maybe days." "Absolutely not. We process over $2 billion in transactions every 24 hours. A complete shutdown would save the company," Ethan interrupted, "because if we don't shut down, the malware destroys the network anyway, and we lose everything permanently." Olivia looked at the monitors. Ethan watched her trying to process what she was seeing, trying to understand something that was completely outside her expertise. "Is there any other option?" she asked quietly. No. And if we shut down, can you guarantee we'll be able to restart safely? No. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, she looked directly at Ethan. Then I'm trusting you. Do what you need to do. Ethan nodded and turned back to his keyboard. Chen and Maya moved to their stations. Together, they began the shutdown sequence. Transaction processing halted. Customer alerts started firing. Support phone lines immediately lit up with panicked calls from businesses and individuals who suddenly couldn't access their money. But the malware stopped spreading. The operations center went eerily quiet as system after system went offline. Display monitors that had been showing chaos 5 minutes ago now showed nothing but black screens with a single message. System maintenance in progress. Now what? Chen asked. Now, Ethan said, we start cleaning. Every infected node has to be isolated, scrubbed, and verified before we can bring it back online. It's going to take most of the night. Most of the night? Olivia looked pale. We can't be down that long. The board can wait, Ethan said flatly. Unless you want to bring the system back online with active malware still in the network. She didn't argue. The work began in silence, broken only by the clicking of keyboards and the occasional muttered curse when someone found another infected node. Ethan moved between workstations like a surgeon coordinating a complex operation, checking work, adjusting protocols, redirecting engineers when they hit dead ends. Olivia stood off to the side, watching. She'd pulled up a chair near the observation windows and sat there with her phone in her hand, fielding calls from board members and major clients who wanted to know why their transactions had suddenly stopped processing. Around 1 a.m, Ethan heard her voice rise slightly. I understand your concern, Mr. Patterson, but I can't give you an exact timeline. No, I can't just turn it back on, because turning it back on before we're certain the system is secure would put your company's funds at even greater risk. She sounded exhausted. Good. Maybe exhaustion would make her understand what he'd been dealing with for the past 2 days. Ethan, Maya called from her workstation. I've got something weird in Sector 7. The malware signature is different from the others. He crossed the floor to look at her screen. She was right. Most of the malware they'd been finding followed the same basic structure, the same code patterns. But this instance had additional layers, encryption he hadn't seen before. It's evolving, he said quietly. What? The malware. It's adapting to our countermeasures, learning from what we're doing. He pulled up the code analysis. Look at this. It's using our own cleaning protocols to hide itself. Every time we scrub a node, it migrates the data somewhere else before we can catch it. Chen appeared behind them. So everything we've cleaned could still be infected? No, not everything. Just some things. We need to change our approach. Ethan straightened up, his back protesting the movement. Maya, can you pull up the network topology map, the full infrastructure diagram? She brought it up on the main display. The entire Aurelius Pay network spread across the screen like a massive spider web, hundreds of nodes interconnected by thousands of pathways. Show me everywhere we've cleaned in the past 3 hours, Ethan said. Green indicators appeared across the map. They'd made decent progress. Maybe 40% of the network was verified clean. Now show me current infection points. Red indicators bloomed across the screen, far more than there should have been. The malware had reinfected nodes they'd already cleaned, finding pathways they hadn't thought to block. We're losing ground, Chen said flatly. No, we're learning. Ethan studied the pattern of reinfection. There was a logic to it, a structure. The malware wasn't random. It was following specific pathways, prioritizing certain nodes over others. It's trying to reach the backup systems. If it gets into our offline storage, into the disaster recovery infrastructure, we'll never get it out, Maya finished. Even if we clean the entire active network, it'll just reinfect from the backups the moment we restore. Exactly. Ethan pointed at a cluster of nodes on the edge of the map. These are the gateway points between active processing and backup storage. We need to isolate them, physically disconnect them if we have to. That's going to require authorization, Chen said. Those are critical infrastructure components. If we disconnect them and something goes wrong, something has already gone wrong, Ethan said. We're just trying to prevent it from getting catastrophically worse. He turned to find Olivia standing behind him. She'd left her chair by the windows and approached without him noticing. You need authorization to disconnect backup systems? She asked. Yes. Then you have it. Do what you need to do. Chen looked uncomfortable. Ms. Bennett, if we physically disconnect the backup infrastructure and there's a failure in the active systems, we won't be able to restore from backups. We could lose everything. And if we don't disconnect them, the malware gets into the backups and we lose everything anyway, Ethan said. Just slower and with less control over how it happens. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Ethan could see her running calculations in her head, trying to figure out which disaster scenario was less disastrous. Finally, she nodded. Do it. The physical disconnection required an engineer to go down to the server rooms and manually pull cables. A young guy named Rodriguez volunteered, probably because he was tired of staring at code and wanted to do something that felt concrete. Just the backup gateway nodes, Ethan told him. Don't touch anything else. And Rodriguez? Be careful down there. Some of those server rooms haven't been properly maintained in years. Watch for loose floor panels. Rodriguez headed for the stairs. The elevators were technically faster, but nobody wanted to trust building systems right now. Everything electronic felt suspect. While they waited for Rodriguez to reach the server floor, Ethan pulled up the malware code again. Studied it. Whoever had written this was good. Really good. The architecture was elegant in a way that almost deserved admiration if it wasn't actively destroying everything he'd spent years building. You recognize the coding style? Maya asked. She'd come to stand beside him, coffee cup in hand. Maybe. There's something familiar about it. The way it handles data encryption, the recursion patterns. Ethan shook his head. Could just be my imagination. Or it could be someone who learned from the same people we did. Someone who worked here. That's a cheerful thought. Maya smiled grimly, just trying to add to the general atmosphere of paranoia and despair. Rodriguez's voice came through the radio. I'm at the server room. These cables are seriously old. Some of them look like they haven't been touched since the building was built. Just disconnect the ones I marked, Ethan said. Gateway nodes only. Yeah, about that. Some of these labels don't match your map. Like, at all. Of course they didn't. Because nothing about this situation could be straightforward. Describe what you're seeing, Ethan said. Okay, so I've got rows of servers, right? But the labeling system seems to use some kind of old convention that doesn't match the digital inventory. I've got things labeled like Core Processing Alpha, but nothing called Gateway Node 7, which is what your map says should be here. Ethan pulled up the historical infrastructure documentation, scrolled back through years of updates and modifications. Okay. Core Processing Alpha is the old name for what's now Gateway Node 7. The labeling was changed in 2019, but nobody ever updated the physical labels. That seems like a pretty significant oversight. Welcome to Legacy Infrastructure Management. Just disconnect Core Processing Alpha through Delta. Those should correspond to Gateway Nodes 7 through 10. On it. The radio went quiet. Ethan watched the network topology map, waiting for the indicators to change when Rodriguez pulled the cables. Nothing happened. Rodriguez? Ethan keyed the radio. You disconnect them? No response. Rodriguez? Still nothing. Maya and Chen exchanged worried looks. Ethan was already moving toward the stairs. Stay here, he told the team. Keep working on the active nodes. I'll check on Rodriguez. I'm coming with you, Maya said. Someone needs to coordinate if Chen can coordinate. I'm coming with you. They took the stairs down 6 floors to the server level. The stairwell was cold, utilitarian, nothing like the polished aesthetic of the upper floors. Down here was where the real work happened, where the actual infrastructure lived behind locked doors and climate-controlled environments. The server room door was propped open with a fire extinguisher. Not standard procedure, but then nothing about tonight was standard. Rodriguez? Ethan called into the darkness beyond. The overhead lights were on, but they only illuminated about half the space. The rest was shadowed by rows of server racks creating maze-like corridors. Back here, Rodriguez's voice came from somewhere in the darkness. You're going to want to see this. Ethan and Maya navigated through the racks. The air was cold enough that their breath came out in faint clouds. The sound of cooling fans created a constant white noise that made it hard to hear anything else. They found Rodriguez standing in front of an open server panel, staring at something inside. What's wrong? Ethan asked. Rodriguez pointed. That's what's wrong. Inside the panel, among the legitimate cables and components, was a device that absolutely didn't belong there. A small black box with blinking LEDs connected directly to the server's motherboard. Is that? Maya started. A physical tap, Ethan finished. Someone installed a hardware device on our servers. That's how the malware got in. It's not just a software attack. Rodriguez looked pale. There could be more of these, right? On other servers? Probably. Ethan pulled out his phone and took photos of the device from multiple angles. Don't touch it. Don't disconnect it. If we start pulling these things out without understanding how they're networked, we could trigger something worse. How could it be worse? It could be worse, Ethan said grimly. These devices could be set up with dead man switches. Removal triggers a wipe command, or they could be networked together. Pull one and the others activate. We need to map out all of them before we remove any of them. Maya was already walking down the rows of servers, checking each one. Found another one, she called. 3 racks over. Don't touch it, Ethan reminded her. I know, just documenting. She took photos with her own phone. They spent the next 20 minutes searching the server room, found 7 hardware taps total, each one installed with professional precision. Someone had planned this carefully, had physical access to the building, knowledge of the infrastructure, time to install devices without being noticed. Back in the operations center, Ethan uploaded the photos to the main display. The engineering team gathered around, their exhaustion temporarily forgotten in the face of this new revelation. So, we're not just dealing with a software breach, Chen said. We're dealing with someone who physically compromised our servers. Looks that way. How long have those devices been there? Could be days. Could be months. Ethan zoomed in on one of the photos. These are pretty sophisticated. Custom hardware, professional installation. Whoever did this had resources and expertise. Olivia had been standing quietly in the background. Now she spoke up. We need to call the police. This is corporate espionage. Maybe worse. Police will want to shut everything down for investigation, Maya said. Take the servers as evidence. We can't operate without them. We're not operating right now anyway, Olivia pointed out. But we're trying to fix it so we can. If the police take our servers, we're done. The company shuts down. Everyone loses their jobs. All our clients lose access to their funds. Olivia's expression suggested she hadn't thought about it that way. So what do you propose we do? Fix the immediate problem first, Ethan said. Get the network clean and operational. Document everything. Then we can deal with the investigation and the fallout. And if whoever installed those devices is still around, still monitoring us, then they're watching us clean up their mess. Not much we can do about that right now. It was a deeply unsatisfying answer, but it was the truth. They were fighting on multiple fronts with limited resources and no time to properly address any single problem. Ethan turned back to the team. Okay, new priority. We need to understand how these hardware taps are communicating with the malware. If we can disrupt that communication, we might be able to isolate the infection even without removing the physical devices. How do we do that? Rodriguez asked. We trace the signal. These things have to be transmitting data somehow, either through the network itself or through some kind of external connection. Ethan pulled up network traffic analysis tools. Maya, can you set up packet capture on the gateway nodes? Focus on any traffic that looks suspicious. Unknown protocols, encrypted channels, anything that doesn't match our standard operations. On it. The next hour was spent diving deep into network traffic data. Thousands of connections, millions of packets, all of it flowing through Aurelius Pay's infrastructure in patterns that should have been familiar but now felt threatening. Around 3 in the morning, Maya found it. There, she said, highlighting a series of packets on her screen. See this pattern? Data packets going to an external IP address that's not on any of our authorized lists. They're small, sent at irregular intervals. Could be status updates from the hardware taps. Ethan studied the traffic. Can you trace the IP? Already tried. It's bouncing through multiple proxies. Professional obfuscation. Okay. Can we block the traffic? We can try. Might trigger defensive protocols in the malware if it detects we're interfering with its command and control. Or it might blind whoever's running this operation. Make it harder for them to adapt their attack. Chen looked skeptical. That's a big gamble. Everything we're doing tonight is a gamble, Tess, Ethan said. At least this one has a chance of paying off. Block the traffic, Maya. She implemented the firewall rules. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the monitors showing infection spread started updating. The red indicators weren't multiplying as fast, weren't adapting as quickly to their cleaning efforts. It's working, Rodriguez said. The infection rate is slowing. Don't celebrate yet, Ethan warned. Whoever's behind this will notice eventually. They'll find another way in. But for now, they had an advantage. A small one, but something. The team worked with renewed energy, scrubbing infected nodes while the malware was partially blind. By 4 in the morning, they'd cleaned 60% of the network. By 5, 75%. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, Maya's sister. Chloe is fine. Fed her breakfast and she's watching morning cartoons. Says she's not worried about you because you always fix things. The text made his chest tight. His 7-year-old daughter had more faith in him than he had in himself right now. He texted back, "Thank you. I'll be home soon, I hope." Another hour of work. More infected nodes cleaned. The malware was still adapting, still trying to spread, but without its command and control signals, it was operating on autopilot. Dangerous, but predictable. At 6:30, Chen straightened up from his workstation and announced, "That's the last one. Every node in the active network is clean." The operations center erupted in tired cheers. Engineers high-fived each other. Someone started crying from exhaustion and relief. Ethan didn't celebrate. He was staring at the network map, looking for patterns, looking for the thing they'd missed. "What's wrong?" Maya asked. "It was too easy." "Easy? We've been working for 8 hours straight." "I mean, the endgame was too easy. We blocked one communication channel and suddenly the malware became manageable? Whoever designed this system is too smart for that. They'd have backup plans. Maybe they didn't expect us to find the hardware taps. Or maybe finding the hardware taps was part of the plan." The operations center went quiet. Everyone was looking at Ethan now. "You think this is a distraction?" Olivia asked. She'd remained throughout the night, watching, occasionally fielding calls, but mostly staying out of the way. "I think it's suspicious that we found an obvious physical breach, blocked an obvious communication channel, and suddenly everything became solvable." Ethan pulled up the server room photos again. These devices were installed professionally, hidden but not too hidden. We found them because Rodriguez went down there, but we only went down there because we needed to physically disconnect the backup gateways. So maybe someone wanted us to disconnect those gateways, wanted us to isolate the backup systems. Maya's eyes widened. The backups. If we can't restore from backups because they're physically disconnected, then any data we lose is gone permanently, Ethan finished, and we haven't checked what data might have been corrupted before we shut everything down. Chen was already pulling up transaction logs. His fingers flew across the keyboard, running queries, checking data integrity. His face went pale. "No," he said quietly. "No, no, no." "What?" Olivia moved closer. "What did you find?" "Customer account balances. About 40,000 accounts. The data's been altered. Small changes, just a few cents here and there, but it's spread across the entire customer database." "When did it happen?" Ethan asked, though he already knew. "During the shutdown, while we were cleaning the infected nodes. The malware made one last push right before we cut off its communications. Changed account values in ways that wouldn't trigger immediate alerts, but would cause massive reconciliation problems when we try to restart." "How much money are we talking about?" Olivia's voice was steady, but Ethan could see her hands shaking. "Hard to say. Individual changes are small. But across 40,000 accounts, with compounding effects when we try to process new transactions, could be millions. Could be tens of millions." The operations center fell silent. All that work, all those hours of fighting the malware, cleaning the systems, saving the network, and they'd been so focused on the technical battle that they'd missed the real target, the money. "Can we restore from backups?" Olivia asked. "The backups are disconnected," Rodriguez said. "Remember? We physically pulled the cables. Then reconnect them. If we reconnect them before we're certain the active network is completely clean, we could reinfect everything. Plus the backups might already be compromised. Those hardware taps could have been corrupting backup data for weeks." Olivia closed her eyes. Ethan watched her processing this, watched her trying to find some solution that didn't involve catastrophic losses. "How do we fix this?" she asked quietly. "We don't," Ethan said. "Not quickly. We need to go through every affected account manually, compare current values to historical records, identify the changes and reverse them. It's going to take days, maybe weeks." "We don't have weeks. We have clients who need access to their funds. We have businesses that need to process payroll. We have—" "I know what we have," Ethan interrupted, "but rushing the restoration is what got us here. We need to do this right." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned to address the entire operations center. "Everyone who's not critical to immediate restoration operations goes home," she said. "Get some sleep. Be back here in 8 hours. We're going to need everyone fresh for what comes next." The exhausted engineers didn't need to be told twice. They started gathering their things, saving their work, preparing to leave. Maya approached Ethan. "You should go home too. You've been working longer than anyone." "Someone needs to coordinate the account reconciliation." "Chen can coordinate. You need sleep. You need to see your daughter." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to stay and keep fighting, but Maya was right. He'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for so long he could barely think straight anymore. "Okay," he said. 8 hours, then I'm back." He gathered his messenger bag, checked that his laptop was inside, and headed for the elevator. Olivia was still in the operations center, talking on her phone to what sounded like another board member. She looked small suddenly, young, like someone who'd bitten off more than she could chew and was just now realizing how badly she was choking. Ethan almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The morning sun was brutal after spending all night under fluorescent lights. Ethan squinted against it as he walked to his car, every muscle in his body screaming for rest. The drive home passed in a blur. He barely remembered parking, barely remembered climbing the stairs to his apartment. Lisa opened the door before he could get his keys out. "You look like death," she said cheerfully. "Feel like it too. Chloe's in her room. She wanted to wait up for you, but I convinced her to rest. Told her you'd wake her up when you got home. Thank you for everything. I don't know how to—" "Maya's my sister. You're helping save her job. That's payment enough." Lisa grabbed her purse from the couch. "There's coffee in the pot and leftover pancakes in the fridge. Get some actual food in you before you collapse." She left before Ethan could properly thank her. He stood in his apartment, surrounded by the debris of last night's emergency departure, and felt the exhaustion finally catch up to him. But first, Chloe. He knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Bug, you awake?" The door opened immediately. Chloe was still in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep. Mr. Hoppy clutched under one arm. "Daddy!" She hugged him fiercely. "Did you fix the problem?" "Most of it. There's still more work to do, but the worst part is over." "Are you still fired?" "I don't know, Bug. It's complicated." She pulled back to look at him with those serious eyes. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain things. Ethan couldn't help but laugh. "You're right. Okay, here's the truth. I went back to help them with an emergency, but I don't know if that means I have my job back permanently or if I was just there for one night. We'll figure it out." "Do you want your job back?" Did he? A day ago, the answer would have been an automatic yes. But now, after everything that had happened, after being humiliated and then reluctantly welcomed back only when disaster struck, he wasn't sure. "I don't know that either," he admitted. Chloe considered this. Then she said, "Lisa made really good pancakes. You should eat some and then sleep. Things always make more sense after sleeping." "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just don't notice because you're tired all the time." She wasn't wrong. They ate leftover pancakes together in the kitchen while Chloe told him about her evening with Lisa. Apparently they'd watched 3 movies, made cookies, and Lisa had taught her a card game that Chloe insisted made no sense but was fun anyway. "She said I could call her if I ever need help again," Chloe said. "Is that okay?" "That's more than okay, Bug." After breakfast, Ethan managed to shower and change into clean clothes before his body completely gave out. He collapsed on his bed and was asleep in seconds, his last thought being that he needed to set an alarm for 8 hours from now. He woke to his phone ringing. The clock said he'd been asleep for 4 hours. The caller ID said Olivia Bennett. Ethan stared at the phone vibrating in his hand, Olivia Bennett's name glowing on the screen. Every instinct told him to let it go to voicemail. He'd given them everything last night, worked until his body nearly shut down, saved their network from complete collapse. 4 hours of sleep wasn't enough. Wasn't even close to enough. But he answered anyway. What? His voice came out rougher than he intended. We have a problem. Olivia sounded different than she had during the night. More controlled, but with an edge of something underneath. Fear, maybe. I need you to come back. I've been asleep for 4 hours. I know, I'm sorry, but this can't wait. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. Through the bedroom door, he could hear Chloe playing in the living room, her voice bright as she talked to Mr. Hoppy about something. What happened? The board is here. They want a full briefing on the breach. They want to know how it happened, how bad the damage is, and who's responsible. She paused. And they want to talk to you specifically. Why me? Because you're the only one who understands the full scope of what happened. Chen and Maya can explain parts of it, but you were there from the beginning. You documented everything. Ethan wanted to say no. Wanted to tell her that the board could wait until he'd actually gotten some rest, until his brain wasn't operating at half capacity. But he could hear something in her voice that hadn't been there before. Not just fear, desperation. Give me an hour, he said. Thank you. She hung up before he could change his mind. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed for a long moment, gathering the energy to stand. His body felt like it had been run over by something large and unforgiving. Every joint ached. His eyes burned. The headache that had been building all night had settled into a dull throb behind his temples. He found Chloe in the living room, building an elaborate castle out of couch cushions and blankets. Daddy, look! It's a fortress. Mr. Hoppy is the king, and he's protected from dragons. That's great, Bug. Ethan crouched down to her level, even though the movement made his knees protest. Listen, I have to go back to work for a little while. Just a few hours this time. Her face fell. But you just got home. I know, I'm sorry, but they really need my help with something important. They always need your help. She wasn't whining exactly, but there was a heaviness in her voice that made Ethan's chest hurt. Why can't someone else help? Because there wasn't anyone else. Because he'd spent 6 years making himself indispensable, and now he was trapped by his own expertise, but he couldn't explain that to a 7-year-old. I'll be back as soon as I can, he said instead. Do you want to call Lisa and see if you can hang out with her again? I guess. He made the call. Lisa answered on the second ring and agreed immediately, asking if everything was okay. Ethan gave her the abbreviated version, left out the parts about corporate espionage and network breaches, just said there was a work emergency that needed his attention. Bring her over, Lisa said. My kids would love to have someone new to play with. And honestly, Chloe was so well behaved yesterday that having her here is basically like having a tiny, responsible adult around. My own children could learn things from her. 30 minutes later, Ethan was driving back toward the city. Chloe delivered safely to Lisa's house, where she'd immediately been absorbed into a group of kids playing some elaborate game involving a lot of running and shouting. She'd waved goodbye to him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The guilt sat in his stomach like a stone. Aurelius Pay headquarters looked different in daylight, less imposing somehow. Just a building full of people trying to keep a company running despite everything working against them. Ethan parked in the garage and took the elevator up to the executive floor, a level he'd only visited a handful of times in 6 years. The receptionist recognized him. Mr. Foster, they're waiting for you in the main conference room. They turned out to be 7 members of Aurelius Pay's board of directors, Olivia Bennett, and a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as the company's chief legal counsel. They sat around a massive table in a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Ethan had never felt more underdressed in his life. He was wearing jeans and a clean t-shirt because he'd run out of professional clothes after wearing the same outfit for 2 days straight. Everyone else looked like they'd stepped out of a business magazine. Mr. Foster, one of the board members said, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. Thank you for coming on short notice. I'm Margaret Chen, board chair. We have some questions about the security breach. I'll help if I can. Please sit. She gestured to an empty chair next to Olivia. Ethan sat. Noticed that Olivia wouldn't quite meet his eyes. Interesting. We've received preliminary reports from Ms. Bennett and the engineering team, Margaret continued, but we need to understand the full timeline. starting with when you first detected the intrusion. So Ethan told them. Started from 3 days ago when he'd noticed unusual traffic patterns in the overnight logs. Explained how he'd traced the anomalies back to a sophisticated malware infection that had been slowly spreading through the network. Described his attempts to contain it while documenting everything, working alone because he didn't want to trigger panic or alert whoever was behind the attack that they'd been detected. "Why didn't you inform senior management immediately?" one of the board members asked. "Because the malware was designed to activate if it detected security protocols being implemented. I needed to understand it completely before we took any action. If I'd gone to management and they'd started standard incident response procedures, we would have triggered a full payload deployment days ago." "So you took it upon yourself to handle a major security breach alone?" "Yes. That seems like poor judgment." Ethan looked at the board member who'd spoken, a man whose name he'd already forgotten. "Would you have preferred I trigger the catastrophic failure 3 days earlier, before I understood the attack vectors or had any chance of containing it?" The man's face reddened slightly. "I'm saying there are protocols for a reason. And I'm saying those protocols would have destroyed the company faster. I made a judgment call based on 6 years of experience with these systems." Margaret raised a hand, cutting off whatever response was coming. "Let's move forward. You were working on containment when Ms. Bennett arrived for her first day as CEO. Walk us through what happened next." This was the part Ethan had been dreading. He glanced at Olivia. She was staring at the table, her jaw tight. "I'd been working for 48 hours straight," Ethan said carefully. "I was exhausted. I made the mistake of falling asleep at my workstation. Ms. Bennett found me and terminated my employment without asking for an explanation." "Did you attempt to explain the situation?" "I tried. She cut me off. Said she didn't care how long I'd been working, that sleeping on the job was unacceptable." "And you didn't push back? Didn't insist she listen?" "I was being escorted out by security," Ethan said flatly. "There wasn't a lot of opportunity for discussion." The room went quiet. Every board member was now looking at Olivia, who had gone very still. "Ms. Bennett," Margaret said, her tone carefully neutral, "is Mr. Foster's account accurate?" "Yes." Olivia's voice was quiet but steady. "I made a decision based on limited information. I didn't ask the right questions. I assumed I understood the situation when I clearly didn't." "That's a considerable understatement." "I know." Another board member spoke up, a younger man with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested he was enjoying this. "So to be clear, our new CEO's first major decision was to fire the one person actively preventing a catastrophic breach, thereby allowing said breach to worsen until we had no choice but to shut down the entire network?" "That's correct," Olivia said. "And did you apologize to Mr. Foster for this error in judgment?" Olivia finally looked at Ethan. There was something raw in her expression, something that looked almost like pain. "Not adequately, no." The board members exchanged glances. Margaret made a note on the tablet in front of her. The legal counsel whispered something to the person next to him. "Let's continue," Margaret said. "Mr. Foster, after you were terminated, what happened?" Ethan explained the phone calls from Chen and Maya, the board member who'd contacted him, his initial refusal to help and eventual agreement to return, the discovery of the hardware taps in the server room, the battle to clean the infected nodes while the malware adapted and evolved. He pulled up his phone and showed them the photos of the physical devices, explained how sophisticated they were, how professionally installed, how whoever did this had to have had physical access to the building for an extended period. "Do we know who's responsible?" Margaret asked. "Not yet. But these devices are custom built, expensive. Whoever funded this operation had significant resources. Corporate espionage? Possibly. Or a state actor. Or a particularly well-funded criminal organization." Ethan set his phone down. "The malware signature doesn't match anything in the public databases. This was built specifically for our infrastructure." "Which suggests inside knowledge," the legal counsel said. "Yes." "Current or former employee?" "Most likely, or someone who had access to our system documentation. The attack was too precise to be from an outsider working blind." The implications hung in the air. Someone they'd trusted, someone who'd walked these halls, had betrayed them, had tried to destroy the company from the inside. Margaret turned to Olivia. What's the current status of our systems? The active network is clean, Olivia said, but we identified significant data corruption in customer account balances. We're working on manual reconciliation, but it's going to take time. How much time? Days at minimum, possibly longer. And the financial impact? Olivia hesitated, looked at Ethan like she was hoping he'd answer instead. He didn't. We won't know the full extent until the reconciliation is complete, she said finally. But preliminary estimates suggest losses could be substantial, tens of millions potentially. The room erupted. Board members started talking over each other, voices rising in anger and alarm. The legal counsel was typing furiously on his laptop. Margaret had to call for order twice before everyone quieted down. "This is unacceptable," one of the board members said. "We've had a massive breach, significant financial losses, and a complete shutdown of operations, all within the first 24 hours of new leadership." "I understand your concerns," Olivia said. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could see her hands clenched together in her lap. "I take full responsibility for my part in exacerbating this crisis." "Taking responsibility doesn't fix the problem." "No, but I'm committed to doing everything possible to minimize the damage and prevent this from happening again." The young board member who'd been enjoying Olivia's discomfort leaned forward. "With all respect, Ms. Bennett, how can we trust your judgment going forward? Your first major decision nearly destroyed the company." "You can't," Olivia said simply. "Not based on one day. I can only prove myself through my actions moving forward." Margaret looked at Ethan. "Mr. Foster, you've worked with our infrastructure for 6 years. You clearly understand it better than anyone else in this building. What would you recommend we do to prevent this from happening again?" Ethan hadn't expected the question, hadn't expected to be asked for his opinion on anything beyond the technical details of the breach. "You need to invest in your infrastructure," he said. "Not just the software and hardware, but the people who maintain it. Your engineering team is understaffed and overworked. They're running critical systems on equipment that's years out of date. You've been so focused on quarterly growth that you've neglected the foundation everything else sits on. That's a significant financial investment, less significant than the losses you're facing now. And it's not just about money, it's about culture. The previous CEO encouraged a relaxed approach to protocol and oversight. People worked hard, but there wasn't enough structure, not enough verification. That's how someone was able to install physical devices on your servers without anyone noticing." Margaret made more notes. "What else?" "You need a complete security audit. Third-party firm, no internal involvement. They need to examine everything: physical security, network security, employee vetting, access controls, all of it." "Agreed. Anything else?" Ethan looked at Olivia. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You need leadership that understands the difference between looking strong and being effective. Someone who asks questions before making decisions, who values expertise over appearances." The implication was clear. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Foster," Margaret said carefully, "are you suggesting we reconsider Ms. Bennett's position as CEO?" "I'm suggesting you evaluate whether her skills match what this company needs right now. She's clearly intelligent and driven, but intelligence without judgment is dangerous, and judgment requires the humility to admit when you don't know something." Olivia flinched like he'd hit her. Ethan felt a brief flash of satisfaction followed immediately by shame. She'd made a terrible mistake, yes, but publicly undermining her in front of the board was petty. Beneath him. Before he could say anything else, Olivia spoke up. "Mr. Foster is right. I made a catastrophic error in judgment. I prioritized my own assumptions over expert input. I let my desire to appear decisive override basic common sense." She turned to face the board directly. "I don't know if I'm the right person to lead this company. That's your decision to make. But I do know that if you give me another chance, I won't make the same mistake twice." The room went quiet. Everyone stared at Olivia like she'd just done something incomprehensible. Ethan realized why. Most executives would have made excuses, shifted blame, done anything except admit fault so directly. Margaret exchanged looks with the other board members. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "We'll need to discuss this privately," Margaret said. "Mr. Foster, thank you for your time and your work these past 2 days. We'll be in touch regarding your employment status and compensation for the emergency response." I don't want compensation, Ethan said. I want my job back, with a guarantee that I'll have the resources to actually do it properly. That seems reasonable. We'll discuss it. Ethan stood to leave. As he reached the door, Olivia's voice stopped him. Mr. Foster, wait. He turned. She'd stood up from the table, ignoring the watching board members. Can I talk to you? Privately? The board members looked like they wanted to object. Margaret waved them off. Take 15 minutes. We need to caucus anyway. Olivia led Ethan out of the conference room and down the hall to a small office that appeared to be hers. It was barely decorated. A desk, a chair, a few boxes that suggested she hadn't finished moving in yet. She closed the door and turned to face him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I owe you an apology, she said finally. A real one, not the political version I gave the board. Okay, I was wrong to fire you. I was wrong to cut you off when you tried to explain. I was wrong to prioritize my ego over your expertise. She took a breath. I've spent my entire career in environments where showing weakness meant getting crushed. I learned to make quick decisions, to project confidence even when I wasn't sure, to never admit when I didn't know something, and that approach almost destroyed this company. Ethan leaned against the wall. He was too tired to stand without support. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it, and because I need you to understand that I'm not going to make excuses or try to minimize what I did. She sat on the edge of her desk. You saved this company. You worked for days straight, got fired for your efforts, and then came back anyway to prevent a disaster I helped create. That's remarkable. I didn't come back for you, Ethan said. I came back because innocent people would have suffered if I didn't. I know, which somehow makes it worse. You helped people who didn't deserve your help. People always deserve help, even when they're idiots. A ghost of a smile crossed Olivia's face. Fair. They stood in silence for a moment. Ethan studied her, this woman who'd gone from being his boss to his nightmare to something he couldn't quite define. She looked exhausted, looked like someone who'd had all her certainties stripped away and was trying to figure out how to function without them. What did you do before this? He asked. Before CEO. Venture capital. I was a partner at Morrison Tech Ventures, focused on fintech startups and scaling operations. So you know money and growth, but not systems, not infrastructure. No, I know spreadsheets and pitch decks and investor relations. I know how to make companies look attractive to buyers, but I don't know how to actually run the technical side of a tech company. She looked down at her hands. The board chose me because they want to take Aurelius Pay public. They needed someone who could navigate that process. But maybe they chose wrong. Maybe they chose someone who needs different skills around them, Ethan said. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know who to ask. Like the engineer I fired on my first day. For example, Olivia laughed, but it sounded hollow. The board is going to fire me, aren't they? I don't know. Maybe. Ethan pushed off from the wall. Does it matter? What kind of question is that? I mean, do you actually want this job, or did you just want the title? She stared at him. That's insulting. It's honest. There's a difference between wanting to be CEO and wanting to do the work of being CEO. One is about status, the other is about service. I want to do the work, Olivia said quietly. I thought I knew how. Turns out I was wrong about that too. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Chloe is fine, but asking when you'll be home. No rush, just wanted you to know. He showed Olivia the text. That's my daughter. She's 7. She's been staying with a friend while I deal with all this. You're a single parent? Yeah, her mother died 4 years ago. Cancer. Olivia's expression shifted. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, but it's why I was working alone for 2 days straight. I can't just stay at the office indefinitely. I have responsibilities that matter more than this company. Of course. And it's why I fell asleep at my desk. Because I'd been awake for 48 hours trying to save your systems while making sure my daughter got to school and ate meals and didn't feel abandoned. Ethan heard his voice getting harder, felt the exhaustion and frustration of the past few days bubbling up. So when you found me asleep and decided I was lazy or incompetent or whatever judgment you made in those 90 seconds, you were wrong, not just about the situation, about me. I know, Olivia said. I know that now. Do you? Because knowing it in hindsight is easy. The hard part is remembering it the next time you have to make a snap judgment about someone, the next time an employee looks unprofessional or doesn't meet your standards or challenges your authority. Are you going to pause and ask questions? Or are you going to make another quick decision that destroys someone's life? Olivia didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was very quiet. I don't know. I want to say I'll do better, that I've learned my lesson, but I've been wrong about so much already that I'm not sure I trust my own judgment anymore. It was possibly the most honest thing Ethan had heard from an executive in 6 years. Then hire people you do trust, he said. Build a team that will tell you when you're wrong, who won't just agree with you because you're the boss and actually listen when they talk. Like you, like me, like Maya, like Chen, like the purple-haired engineer whose name I can't remember but who is ready to fight you on my behalf. Sarah, Olivia said. Her name is Sarah, and she's already submitted her resignation. Said she doesn't want to work for someone who fires people without cause. Ethan hadn't known that, felt a surge of loyalty towards Sarah even though they'd barely interacted. Can you convince her to stay? I'm going to try. I've been trying to figure out how to apologize to the entire engineering team for what I did to you, how to rebuild trust I destroyed in one morning. Start by admitting you were wrong, not just to the board, to the people who actually work here, the ones who saw what you did and are wondering if they're next. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's just necessary. Someone knocked on the door. Margaret's voice came through. We're ready to continue. Olivia took a deep breath. Okay, thank you for talking to me. Don't thank me yet. You might not like what happens next. They returned to the conference room together. The board members had rearranged themselves somehow, like pieces on a chessboard moving into new positions. Margaret gestured for them to sit. We've made some decisions, she said. First, regarding Mr. Foster. We're offering you reinstatement as senior systems engineer with a substantial salary increase and expanded authority over infrastructure security. You'll report directly to the CTO and have final approval on all major system changes. Additionally, we're authorizing immediate hiring of 3 additional engineers to support your department. Ethan blinked. That was more than he'd expected. Okay, thank you. Second, regarding the security breach, we're hiring an external firm to conduct a complete audit as you suggested. We're also implementing new physical security protocols and employee vetting procedures. Good. Margaret turned to Olivia. Third, regarding leadership, the board has decided to give Ms. Bennett a provisional period to prove herself. 6 months, during which time she'll work closely with a board-appointed advisor who has operational experience in tech companies. She'll need to demonstrate improved judgment and effective leadership. At the end of 6 months, we'll reevaluate her position. Olivia nodded slowly. I understand. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't thank us yet, Margaret said, echoing Ethan's earlier words. You're on probation. One more significant error in judgment and you're out. Clear? Crystal clear. Good. Mr. Foster, do you have any objections to this arrangement? Ethan thought about it. Thought about Olivia's admission of fault, her willingness to be honest about her limitations. Thought about the fact that she could have made excuses or shifted blame but hadn't. No objections, he said. But I have a condition. Which is? I need a schedule that allows me to actually be a parent. I can't work 80-hour weeks indefinitely. I need to be able to pick up my daughter from school sometimes, to be home for dinner, to be present in her life. Margaret smiled slightly. I think we can accommodate that, especially now that you'll have additional staff. The meeting wrapped up shortly after. Details about contracts and compensation and reporting structures. Ethan only half listened, too tired to process most of it. They'd send him paperwork. He'd sign it, or not. Right now, all he wanted was to pick up his daughter and go home. As people filed out of the conference room, Olivia caught his arm. Ethan. Can I call you Ethan? Sure. I meant what I said. About the apology. About trying to do better. I know. And I want you to know that if you see me making another mistake, if I'm about to do something stupid or short-sighted, I need you to tell me, even if it's uncomfortable, especially if it's uncomfortable. Ethan studied her face, saw genuine intent there, but also uncertainty. She meant it now. Whether she'd still mean it 6 months from now, when the crisis had faded and old habits reasserted themselves, remained to be seen. "I'll hold you to that," he said. "Please do." He left the building and drove to Lisa's house feeling strange, lighter somehow, despite the exhaustion. The crisis wasn't over. They still had weeks of cleanup ahead, still had to figure out who'd planted those devices and why. But the immediate disaster had been averted. Lisa's house was chaos when he arrived. Children running everywhere, laughter and shrieks, and the general noise of happy kids playing. Lisa met him at the door with a smile. "Your daughter is a saint," she said. "She's been helping my youngest with her homework for the past hour. I tried to tell her she's supposed to be playing, but she insisted." Ethan found Chloe sitting at the kitchen table with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5, carefully explaining addition with the patience of someone much older. "See? 3 plus 2 is 5. You can count it on your fingers." The little girl counted on her fingers, her face brightening when she got the right answer. "Bug," Ethan said softly. Chloe looked up. "Daddy, are you done with work?" "For now. You ready to go home?" She nodded, already gathering her things. Said goodbye to Lisa's kids with hugs and promises to play again soon. Thanked Lisa with the kind of politeness that always made Ethan proud. In the car, Chloe was quiet for a while. Then she said, "Did you get your job back?" "Yeah, Bug, I did. Are you happy about it?" Was he? A day ago, losing his job had felt like a catastrophe. Now having it back felt complicated. The job itself hadn't changed. The systems were still old, still vulnerable. The work was still demanding. But something had shifted. Maybe him. Maybe his understanding of what he was willing to tolerate. "I think so," he said. "It's going to be different now. Better, I hope. Because the boss lady learned she was wrong?" Something like that. "Good. She should have listened to you in the first place." Ethan smiled. "Yes, she should have." They stopped for takeout on the way home because Ethan couldn't face cooking, and Chloe requested chicken nuggets with the kind of enthusiasm reserved for 7-year-olds and fast food. They ate on the couch while watching cartoons, Mr. Hoppy wedged between them. Halfway through dinner, Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from Maya. Sarah agreed to stay. Olivia personally apologized to the whole engineering team. It was awkward as hell, but she meant it. Things might actually get better. He texted back, "Maybe. We'll see." Another text, this time from Chen. "Welcome back, man. For real this time, and thank you for saving our asses." Ethan set his phone aside and focused on his daughter, on the simple normalcy of chicken nuggets and cartoons and not having to think about malware or network breaches or corporate politics. Later, after Chloe was in bed and the apartment was quiet, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop, pulled up the documentation he'd created during those 2 desperate days of fighting the breach, started organizing it into a formal report for the security audit team. The work felt different now. Not like fighting alone in the dark against an enemy nobody else understood. More like building something, creating a foundation that might actually support the weight placed on it. His phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Olivia. "I know it's late, but I wanted to say thank you, not just for the technical work, for being honest with me when I needed it. I'm going to try to deserve the second chance I've been given." Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Finally typed back, "Don't try, just do it. Actions matter more than intentions." Her response came quickly. "Understood. See you Monday." Monday. 3 days away. 3 days to rest, to spend time with Chloe, to remember that he was more than just an engineer fighting fires at a company that kept almost burning down. He closed his laptop and went to check on his daughter. Found her asleep with Mr. Hoppy clutched against her chest, her face peaceful in the glow of her nightlight. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her breathe, this small person who depended on him completely, and felt something in his chest ease. The job was important, the work mattered, but this quiet moment with his sleeping daughter, this was what he'd really been fighting for all along. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Ethan woke before his alarm, his body still remembering the crisis rhythm of the past week, even though his mind knew the immediate danger had passed. He made breakfast for Chloe, scrambled eggs that came out slightly too dry, toast that was almost burned, and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety building in his chest. Going back felt strange, like returning to a place that looked the same but had fundamentally changed. Are you nervous? Chloe asked, watching him over her orange juice. A little. Why? You saved them. They should be happy you're coming back. It's complicated, Bug. She gave him that look, the one that said she knew adults were hiding things but was too polite to push. Okay, but if anyone is mean to you, you should tell them they're wrong. I'll keep that in mind. He dropped her at school, watching her run toward the building with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She turned at the door to wave, and Ethan waved back, struck by how young she still was despite all the ways she'd learned to be grown up too soon. The drive to Aurelius Pay felt longer than usual. Ethan took the turns on autopilot while his mind ran through possible scenarios. Would the engineering team treat him differently now? Would there be resentment that he'd been reinstated with a raise and expanded authority while they'd been working just as hard? Would Olivia actually follow through on her promises, or would the old patterns reassert themselves once the crisis faded? The parking garage security guard waved him through with a smile. Good to see you back, Mr. Foster. Thanks. The lobby was busy with the usual Monday morning chaos. People rushing to meetings, clutching coffee cups, scrolling through phones. Nobody paid attention to Ethan as he crossed to the elevators. He could have been invisible. The operations center was different. The moment he stepped off the elevator, conversation stopped. Every head turned. Then Maya started clapping. It spread through the room like a wave. Engineers standing up from their workstations, applauding, some of them whistling. Sarah, the purple-haired engineer who'd almost quit, was grinning so wide it looked painful. Welcome back, you stubborn bastard, she called out. Ethan felt his face get hot. Okay. Everyone back to work. We've still got a mess to clean up. Let us have this moment, Chen said, appearing at his shoulder. We earned it. You earned it. The applause faded, but the energy remained. People looked different, lighter, somehow. Like a weight had been lifted that Ethan hadn't realized they'd all been carrying. His old workstation had been cleaned and reorganized. Someone had left a coffee cup with "World's Most Stubborn Engineer" printed on it. The monitors showed current system status. All green indicators, transaction processing running smoothly, no alerts. We've been running stable for 3 days, Chen said, following Ethan's gaze. No anomalies, no suspicious traffic. Whatever that malware was doing, we stopped it. For now. You're a real optimist, you know that? I'm a realist. The hardware taps are still in the server room. We blocked their communications, but we haven't removed them. Whoever planted them is still out there. The security audit team is supposed to start today. They'll handle the physical devices. Ethan settled into his chair. The coffee cup was ridiculous, but somehow perfect. What's the status on account reconciliation? 72% complete. We've recovered most of the corrupted data. Final losses are looking like 8.3 million instead of the tens of millions we feared. Still a lot of money. Yeah, but the board approved coverage. They're treating it as the cost of the security failure rather than trying to make customers absorb it. That was something, at least. Ethan pulled up his email and immediately regretted it. 300 unread messages. He started sorting through them, deleting the automated alerts from the crisis period, flagging the ones that actually needed responses. An hour into work, his desk phone rang. Olivia's extension. Foster, he answered. Can you come up to my office? There's someone I want you to meet. The executive floor felt as foreign as it had on Friday. Ethan found Olivia's office, still barely decorated, still with half-unpacked boxes, and knocked on the open door. Olivia was there with a man Ethan didn't recognize. Late 50s, gray beard, wearing jeans and a polo shirt that suggested he didn't care much about corporate dress codes. Ethan, this is Richard Moss. He's the operational advisor the board appointed to work with me. Richard stood and offered his hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. I've heard a lot about you. Read your documentation on the breach. Impressive work. Just doing my job. Most people's just doing my job doesn't include solo containment of a sophisticated cyber attack while working for 48 hours straight. Richard gestured to a chair. Sit. I want to pick your brain about infrastructure. They spent the next hour talking through Aurelius Pay's technical architecture. Richard asked good questions, the kind that showed he actually understood systems rather than just knowing buzzwords. He'd worked at 3 different tech companies, helped scale their operations, dealt with his share of crises. The problem you've got here, Richard said, is classic. You've been growing fast for years, but the foundation hasn't kept pace. You're running modern transaction processing on infrastructure that was built for a fraction of the load. I've been saying that for 2 years, Ethan said. I know. I read your proposals from 2023. The ones that got rejected because infrastructure upgrades don't show immediate ROI. Richard looked at Olivia. That's changing now. The board has approved a complete modernization plan. We're talking new servers, updated security protocols, redundant systems. Everything Ethan's been asking for. Ethan blinked. Everything? Well, within reason. We're not replacing the entire data center overnight. But yes, you're getting the budget and authority to actually fix things properly. It should have felt like victory, like vindication. Instead, Ethan just felt tired. That breach didn't have to happen. If someone had listened 2 years ago, then you would have prevented this specific attack but not the next one, Richard interrupted. Because there's always a next one. Systems need constant updating. Security requires ongoing investment. You can't fix everything once and be done. I know that, but we lost $8 million and nearly destroyed the company because nobody wanted to spend money on boring infrastructure. You're right, Olivia said quietly. And I'm sorry. Not just for my mistake, but for the institutional failures that came before it, for every proposal that got rejected, every warning that got ignored. Ethan looked at her. She met his eyes without flinching. There was something different about her now, less polished, more real. Apologies don't fix systems, he said. No, but action does, and we're committing to action. Richard is here to make sure I don't screw this up again. Richard smiled slightly. She's being modest. She asked the board for oversight. Most executives would have fought against it. She requested it. That was interesting. Ethan studied Olivia, trying to figure out if this was genuine growth or just good crisis management. I need to get back to work, he said, standing. The reconciliation won't finish itself. Of course, but Ethan... Olivia stood as well. Thank you for giving this another chance, for giving me another chance. He nodded and left before the conversation could get more uncomfortable. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work. Transaction logs to verify, security protocols to update, training sessions with the 3 new engineers who were starting next week. Normal work. The kind of steady progress that didn't make headlines but kept systems running. At 4 o'clock, Ethan did something he hadn't done in years. He shut down his computer and left to pick up Chloe from school. The other parents in the pickup line did double takes when they saw him. He'd become the dad who was never there, who always sent Chloe to after-school care because work ran late. Seeing him in the actual pickup line was apparently noteworthy. Chloe's face when she spotted his car was worth every awkward stare. She ran over, backpack bouncing, and climbed into the passenger seat with a grin that could light up cities. You came! I came. How was school? Good. We learned about fractions and I helped Tommy understand them because he was confused. And at recess, me and Sarah built a fort out of jump ropes, and Mrs. Patterson said my book report was excellent. She chattered the whole drive home, filling the car with stories about friends and lessons and the drama of 7-year-old social dynamics. Ethan listened, really listened, instead of thinking about work or problems or everything he needed to fix. At home, they made dinner together. Chloe insisted on helping, standing on a stool to reach the counter while they made pasta with vegetables. She wasn't very good at chopping, the pieces were uneven and some were comically large, but she was trying. Daddy, she said while they were waiting for water to boil, are things better now? At work? Getting better. It's going to take time. But you're not in trouble anymore. No, Bug. I'm not in trouble. Good. She stirred the pasta with careful concentration. I don't like when you're sad. I'm not sad. She gave him a look that suggested she didn't believe him but was too kind to argue. After dinner, after homework and bath time and stories, Ethan sat on the couch with his laptop. Not working, just thinking. The apartment was quiet except for the soft sounds of Chloe sleeping in her room. Mr. Hoppy probably clutched against her chest like always. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Security team found something. You should see this. She sent a photo. One of the hardware taps from the server room opened to reveal its internal components. And there, etched into the circuit board in letters so small they almost needed a microscope, were initials, DR. Ethan stared at the image. Dr. David Richardson. a former senior engineer who'd left Aurelius Pay 2 years ago after his proposals for security upgrades had been rejected, who'd argued that the company was vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack they'd just experienced, who'd quit in frustration when nobody would listen. Another text from Maya. Found his resignation letter in the archives. He specifically warned this could happen, said someone with inside knowledge could exploit the infrastructure. We ignored him. Ethan closed his eyes. Of course. It made perfect sense. Richardson had understood the systems well enough to identify their weaknesses. Had been angry enough when his warnings were dismissed to come back and prove his point. The malware wasn't just sophisticated. It was targeted. Personal. Did you tell Olivia? He texted back. About to. Wanted you to know first. Security team is contacting law enforcement. So it would become a police matter now. Investigations and charges and probably a trial. Richardson would claim he was trying to expose vulnerabilities, that he never intended actual harm. The lawyers would argue about intent versus impact. It would all be very complicated and take months to resolve. But at least they knew. At least the mystery was solved. Ethan set his phone down and looked around his apartment, at the dishes drying in the rack, at Chloe's backpack hanging by the door, at the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table that they'd been working on together for weeks. This was what mattered. Not corporate drama, not billion-dollar companies, not even sophisticated cyber attacks and the people who launched them. Just this quiet space where a tired father tried his best to raise a good kid. His phone rang. Olivia, you heard? She said without preamble. Yeah, Maya sent me the photo. I can't believe it was Richardson. He was brilliant. Everyone said he was one of the best engineers we'd ever had. He was also right about the vulnerabilities, about the risks. We didn't listen. I know. Olivia sounded exhausted. The board wants a statement. They want to announce that we've identified the perpetrator, that law enforcement is involved. They think it'll reassure clients. Will it? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it'll just remind everyone how badly we failed. Both can be true. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Ethan, can I ask you something? Off the record? Sure. Do you think I can actually do this, lead this company, or am I just delaying the inevitable? It was the most vulnerable question he'd heard from an executive, the kind of thing people usually hid behind confidence and bravado. I think you can do it, Ethan said slowly. If you remember this feeling, this uncertainty, this awareness that you don't have all the answers. That's not very reassuring. It's honest. The moment you start thinking you figured it all out is the moment you make your next catastrophic mistake. Stay uncertain. Keep asking questions. Listen to people who know more than you about their specific domains. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also the job. Olivia laughed, and it sounded more genuine than anything he'd heard from her before. Okay, thank you. I'll let you get back to your evening. Olivia? Yeah? Don't work too late. The problems will still be there tomorrow. Says the man who worked for 48 hours straight. Yeah, well, I learned my lesson. You should too. She promised to leave within the hour and hung up. Ethan doubted she'd actually keep that promise. Executives rarely did, but maybe she'd at least try. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Ethan worked his regular hours and left when he was supposed to leave. He picked up Chloe from school twice a week. They had dinner together every night. He was present in a way he hadn't been since Sarah had died. The infrastructure upgrade started. New servers arrived. Security protocols were updated. The 3 new engineers turned out to be competent and eager, asking good questions and actually listening to answers. Chen stepped into a team lead role and handled it well. Maya took on more responsibility for security oversight and thrived. The account reconciliation finished. Final losses settled at just over $8 million, which the company absorbed. Most clients never knew how close they'd come to losing everything. Richardson was arrested quietly. The legal proceedings started. The details would take months to unfold, but the immediate threat was neutralized. Olivia changed too. Slowly. Not in dramatic ways, but in small adjustments that added up. She started attending the weekly engineering team meetings, not to run them, just to listen, to understand what people were working on, what challenges they faced. She asked questions now, real questions, not the kind meant to show she already knew the answer. And when she made mistakes, which she did, because everyone did, She admitted them. About 6 weeks after Ethan's return, he was working late on a particularly stubborn routing issue when Olivia appeared at his desk. "You're still here," she said. "Routing problem. It's been bothering me all day." "Can it wait until tomorrow?" "Probably, but I'm close to figuring it out." She pulled up a chair. "Can I watch? I'm trying to understand how this stuff actually works instead of just reading reports about it." Ethan glanced at her. She looked tired but genuinely interested. Not like someone doing a PR exercise, more like someone actually trying to learn. "Sure, but it's going to be boring. I've sat through 8-hour board meetings about fiscal policy. I can handle boring." So he explained what he was doing, walked her through the routing tables, showed her how data packets moved through the network, pointed out the anomaly he'd been chasing. She asked questions that showed she was paying attention. Some of them were basic, but she wasn't embarrassed to ask. An hour later, Ethan found the problem. A misconfigured router that had been installed during the infrastructure upgrade. Simple fix once he identified it. "That's it?" Olivia asked. "You spent all day on that?" "Finding it took all day. Fixing it took 30 seconds. That seems backwards." "Welcome to systems engineering." She stood, stretching. "I should let you go home. Your daughter's probably wondering where you are." "She's at a friend's house. Sleepover. I'm actually alone tonight, which almost never happens." "Then you should do something fun. Not sit here fixing routers. This is fun. For me. I like solving problems." Olivia smiled. "I noticed. Look, I know I keep saying this, but I really am grateful you came back. Not just because you saved the company, because you showed me what actual expertise looks like, what real leadership requires. I'm not a leader. I'm an engineer. You led the team through the crisis. You made decisions under pressure. You inspired people to trust you. That's leadership." Ethan wasn't sure what to say to that. He'd never thought of himself as a leader, just someone who did what needed doing. "I should go," Olivia said. "But Ethan, when you pick up Chloe tomorrow, tell her thank you from me." "For what?" "For sharing her dad. For understanding that sometimes you need to stay late or deal with emergencies. Not every kid would be that patient." After she left, Ethan sat at his desk for a while longer. Not working, just thinking about how strange the past 2 months had been. How close everything had come to falling apart. How many small decisions and random chances had combined to prevent total disaster. He thought about Richardson, brilliant and bitter, trying to prove a point by nearly destroying everything. About Olivia, so sure she understood leadership until reality proved otherwise. About himself, so convinced he had to carry every burden alone. Everyone had been wrong about something. Everyone had learned things the hard way. Maybe that's all growth ever was. Making mistakes, surviving them, trying to do better next time. 3 months after the crisis, Aurelius Pay held a company-wide meeting. Olivia stood in front of 500 employees and told them the truth. About the breach, about the losses, about her mistakes, and the institutional failures that had created vulnerabilities. "We failed you," she said. "I failed you, and I'm sorry. But we're fixing it. Not with words, but with actions. New infrastructure, better security, fair compensation, and most importantly, a commitment to listen when people raise concerns instead of dismissing them because they're inconvenient." She talked about Richardson, about how his warnings had been ignored, how his anger and frustration had grown into something dangerous. "We created the conditions that made this attack possible," Olivia said. "Not just through technical failures, but through cultural ones. Through refusing to invest in the unglamorous work of maintaining systems, through valuing growth over stability, through assuming we knew better than the experts we hired." It was brutal. Honest in a way corporate communications rarely were. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others nodded like they'd been waiting years to hear someone admit these things. "Moving forward, things are going to be different," Olivia continued. "We're implementing open feedback channels. We're investing in infrastructure. We're creating career paths for technical specialists so people don't have to become managers to advance. And we're holding leadership, starting with me, accountable for listening to expertise instead of dismissing it." Ethan watched from the back of the room. Maya stood next to him, arms crossed, expression skeptical. "Think she means it," Maya whispered. "I think she's trying to mean it. Whether she can maintain it long term..." Ethan shrugged. "We'll see." After the meeting, employees lingered in clusters, talking, processing. Some looked energized, others seemed cautious, like they'd been promised change before and learned not to trust it. Sarah approached Ethan with a grin. Your new CEO is either the most authentic person I've ever met or the best actress in tech. Probably both, Ethan said. Most good leaders are. So you trust her now? I trust that she learned something from almost destroying the company. Whether that lesson sticks is a different question. That evening, Ethan picked up Chloe from school and took her out for ice cream. They sat at a small table by the window, watching people walk past, eating chocolate and strawberry in comfortable silence. Daddy, Chloe said, chocolate ice cream on her chin, are you happy? It was such a simple question. Ethan couldn't remember the last time someone had asked him that. Was he happy? His job was still demanding. The work was still endless. Aurelius Pay was still a company with problems that would take years to fully address. Richardson's trial was approaching and would probably dredge up unpleasant memories. Life wasn't perfect, but he was leaving work at reasonable hours, spending evenings with his daughter, sleeping in his own bed instead of on a couch at the office. He had a team that respected him and leadership that listened. The infrastructure was improving. Small victories were adding up to real progress. Yeah, Bug, he said. I think I am. She smiled. Good. You deserve to be happy. Later that night, after Chloe was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Ethan stood in his daughter's doorway watching her breathe. Mr. Hoppy was clutched against her chest like always. Her face was peaceful, untroubled by corporate crises or security breaches or the complicated reality of adult life. He thought about all the things he'd learned over the past few months, that doing the right thing sometimes meant standing alone, that exhaustion could cloud judgment in ways you didn't recognize until after, that people could change if they were willing to be honest about their mistakes, that leadership wasn't about having all the answers. It was about knowing when to ask for help. Most importantly, he'd learned that work mattered, but it wasn't everything. That the quiet moments with Chloe, the ordinary evenings of homework and dinner and bedtime stories, were worth more than any corporate achievement. That being present for his daughter was more important than being indispensable to a company. Richardson had been brilliant, but bitter, had let his anger at being ignored turn into something destructive. Olivia had been confident but blind, had let her need to appear strong prevent her from seeing her own limitations. Ethan himself had been dedicated but isolated, had convinced himself that carrying every burden alone was strength rather than stubbornness. They'd all been wrong in different ways, but at least they'd survived their mistakes. At least they were trying to learn from them. Maybe that was the real story here, not the dramatic breach or the last-minute save or the corporate restructuring, but the smaller, quieter truth that people were flawed and messy and capable of both catastrophic errors and genuine growth. That mistakes didn't have to be endings, that admitting you were wrong was harder than pretending you were right, but also more valuable. That sometimes the person who looked like they were failing was actually the one holding everything together. Ethan closed Chloe's door softly and went to his own room. Tomorrow there would be more work, more problems to solve, more challenges to face. But tonight, he could rest, could let go of the crisis mindset that had consumed him for so long. He slept deeply for the first time in months, and when he woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of Chloe singing to herself in the kitchen, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace of having everything figured out or all problems solved, but the peace of knowing he'd done his best, that he'd stood up for what was right, even when it cost him, that he'd helped people who didn't deserve his help because that's what decent humans did, that he'd been honest when honesty was hard and present when presence mattered. The company would survive. The systems would improve. Life would continue with all its complications and challenges. And Ethan Foster, single father and stubborn engineer, would face whatever came next with his daughter by his side and the knowledge that he was exactly where he needed to be.